Good evening and welcome to our second session of Women Who Win for our 2020 year. I am excited to see the energy coming from our different attendees as we're gearing up and working through different business concepts to bring us into this fall segment of the year. I hope everyone is doing well and had a great Labor Day weekend. Tonight, we shift gears to look at successful business strategizing and making sure that your company is moving in the right direction as you get prepared. So before we get started, first off, I want to thank our presenting sponsor for Women Who Win, Bank of America. We are so thrilled to have Bank of America with us. And for our roundtable participants, if you haven't signed up for the roundtables yet, there is still time. For our roundtable participants, you actually have some cool support coming your way from Bank of America. So they're looking at some things to gear up for this season. So definitely worth it for those of you who've invested in the roundtable programs. And in addition to that, we have the support of Full Sail University for our webinars. So with that being said, I'm excited for tonight's session. I will go ahead and turn the floor over to our Women Who Win co-chair and communications director, Liz Roney, to introduce our speaker for tonight.
I am honored that we have Christy Foley with us this evening. And I'm going to read her bio and then we're going to have her take over. Christy L. Foley Esquire is an attorney who is licensed to practice law in both Florida and New York. In 2012, she founded the law office of Christy L. Foley, which focuses on small businesses and entertainment law. Christy currently serves as the treasurer of the entertainment and sports law section. Christy also runs a second business, a mediation firm called Mediation Services. Since founding that firm in 2018, Christy has become very involved in the mediation community. She serves as chairwoman of Florida's Mediator Ethics Advisory Committee and secretary of the Florida Bar's Alternative Dispute Resolution Section. Plus, she is a frequent lecturer on mediation techniques and ethics across the state. Christy is also recognized as the ADR Section's Member of the Year for the 2019-2020 bar year. In addition to her legal work, Christy has served as a professor at Full Sail University for the past decade, where she gives back to the next generation of learners by mentoring and educating students. And in her spare time, Christy coaches ice skating at the RDV Ice Den. I'm pleased to introduce Christy Foley.
Thank you so much, Liz. I appreciate that introduction. I do take on a lot of things, that's for sure, but it's all because they're lots of fun. So today, my goal is to go through some of the key not only legal issues that women who own businesses need to be aware of, but also go through some of the ways that you can just keep yourself organized. As you can tell, I do have a good bit on my plate, and yet I tend to be smiling almost all the time, and there's a reason for it. I stay organized. So I'll also give you some tips for that. However, the one thing I do want to let you know before we continue is just that all of this is basic legal information, not specific legal advice. So please know this webinar is not technically a consultation or anything like that. With that said, if you have questions, of course, let me know. I do have a lot of content that I'm hoping to get through tonight, but if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that as I go through. And also I'll try and save some time at the end for questions if I can. So today's presentation is going to mostly focus on small businesses that are fairly new, probably about less than 5 years old, and that you already have a specific product or service and you already know your target audience. That's kind of, when I was preparing this presentation, the idea that I had in mind. That's probably what a lot of my examples will focus on. If you're not in that category though, don't worry, you can still take away a lot from tonight's presentation. So Success. You know, honestly, growing up, I thought there was one definition of success, right? That you would know it when you saw it, kind of thing, or it meant a certain amount of money in the bank or a certain kind of job. Honestly, as an adult, I've come to realize that success is what makes you happy, pretty much. But to be happy, you probably want to be achieving your goals. You wouldn't be a woman business owner, someone who's out in her community, winning it every day, if you weren't working hard to achieve your goals. So I basically distilled down how to achieve your goals to number one, being organized, number two, having great protections, and number three, being consistent. From my experience, those are the things that I found have really made my own businesses successful and also my clients' businesses successful. So when it comes to organization, you have to be organized. You not only have to make sure that your personal life is organized, but also your business life, your work life. For many of you who may be working and starting your own business, there could be 3 separate lives to get organized, which is a lot to juggle. And that makes it very easy to get overwhelmed if you don't have a system in place. So I recommend playing with a few different tools and seeing what you like. Personally, for me, I would die without Google Calendar. It sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I really don't think I am. If Google Calendar ever went down, I wouldn't know when my meetings are, where to go, anything like that. I have a few different email accounts for different businesses and schools I teach at and all that. So for me, one Outlook calendar doesn't do it. However, I put everything on Google Calendar, so everything is consolidated, nothing overlaps on there. And so for me, that's a really helpful tool. I can also put tasks in there so that as I need to get things done, I can check them off. I can block off time to get tasks done if I want to. I can color code different tasks. It's fantastic. I love it. If you ever have Google Calendar questions, let me know. But Google does have a whole suite of different tools that can be helpful. You know, Google Sheets, Google Docs, also Evernote. Evernote is helpful for keeping yourself organized, having different notebooks. So is OneNote if you're using the Microsoft suite. Whatever it is that helps you stay organized, it doesn't really matter what it's called or how it organizes things. All that matters is that it keeps you on track and keeps things from falling through the cracks for you. So I encourage you to play around with some different tools that can help keep people organized and see what you like, see what resonates with you. Now, when it comes to your business, you want to make sure your business is properly organized as well. So that means making sure it's organized on the state level, the local level, and the federal level. And this is actually an issue we saw with a lot of CARES applicants really recently in Seminole and Orange County. A lot of applicants whose businesses maybe weren't properly licensed at the state or local level, they had trouble getting funding. So it's really important to pay attention to this. So number one, typically when you form a new business, you will register it with the state. You will form that business officially, whether that be LLC, a corporation, a partnership. We'll talk about those later. But whatever business type you choose, you want to make sure you register it with the state. You may even need a specific license for your type of business that you would have to get from the state as well. And then you need to register at the local level too. So business taxes, for example, at the city or the county level, that's going to be important to make sure you're registered for as well. And then on the federal level, you want to probably be able to open a bank account for your business so your business can start taking in some money. I'm guessing that that's something most of you want for your businesses. So you want to have an EIN. That's your employer identification number. It's basically your business's social security number. So you can literally go to the IRS website and get that EIN generated automatically for you for free, really easy. So that's something that we'll talk about, making sure that you have that portion organized because you'll want that when you go open a bank account. And your intellectual property, we'll talk about intellectual property a good bit, copyrights, trademarks, patents, all that. This evening we'll discuss those, and that's important to get in order as well. The sooner you can protect your work, the better, the less likelihood you run into trouble. So when it comes to business formation, there is an option to have a sole proprietorship. I put a giant red X there that looks really annoying because I don't usually recommend a sole proprietorship for anything. Mainly because it doesn't give you any kind of insulation from liability. You can also have a partnership. So partnerships are common if maybe you and one other person are going in on a business together. You can have a partnership if you want to split things. That can work. You can also have an LLC. An LLC it stands for Limited Liability Company. And basically that is a cross between your partnership, solo proprietorship kind of thing, and a corporation. It's kind of in the middle. So basically under the law, an LLC is seen as its own legal entity, which is great for the sake of insulating you personally from liability. And it has to deal with its own taxes, or sometimes the taxes can pass through the individual. You've got a few options there. All things to consult an accountant about. And then with a corporation, you have either an S Corp or a C Corp. So I want you to think about an S Corp as kind of being a small corp, right? For some of the smaller corporations, we'll usually see that choice. And then a C Corp selection for some of the bigger organizations. The basic idea here is that whatever your business is, you want to make sure that you've thought about how much liability there is for you and how much you want to insulate yourself from liability. So if you only want your business's assets to potentially be liable for any kind of damages or lawsuit, breach of contract, whatever, then having a business formation structure that gives you insulation from liability on the personal side is going to be really important. Typically, that is something that people protect or want protected, right? They want to make sure that everything in their house, in their car, and their bank accounts on the personal side stay theirs. So that is an important consideration when you're forming your business officially. Some considerations to think about besides liability include cost. Okay, some business formation processes are simpler than others. You may have a basic knowledge of law and feel like you're confident filing your own sole proprietorship or partnership or something like that. But when it comes to filing for a corporation, maybe even a partnership and getting a partnership agreement drafted, you don't feel comfortable doing that on your own and knowing all the elements of that. So costs can vary depending on what your legal needs are and whether you need an attorney to help you with something. Taxes also vary. So if you're doing a sole proprietorship, all the money is just coming to you. You as an individual are taxed. But if you're doing a corporation, the corporation is the entity paying taxes on any of its money that it earns. So there are different tax implications for you as a result. And so you would want to talk to an accountant to figure out what works best for you. Even if you have a 2-person LLC, you're going to pay different taxes on that than you're going to, or at least file them differently than you would if you had a single member LLC. Okay, so lots of little details that you would want to talk to an accountant and or an attorney about. And then also, if you have any investors in your business, you want to go ahead and see what their preference is. Usually they're going to want some sort of corporate structure, at least an LLC structure, so that they feel confident in the business and their ability to participate in the business. Doesn't always happen, but a lot of times that's what they'll request in order to invest. So you'll also want to consult with any investors to see what their preferences are. So, helpful resource for you, the IRS website. I know it doesn't sound like the IRS website should be helpful. It sounds like it should be torture. I get that, but I promise it's actually quite helpful. So if you go to this link that I have here, you'll see when you click on it, the second bullet point says selecting a business structure. And then that will take you to a list of all the different business structures that we just talked about, and it'll explain some of the key differences between those business structures. So I encourage you to check that out if you haven't already selected a business structure. If you're considering changing a business structure, I definitely recommend taking a look at that particular resource. The other thing you can do is take a look at your state Secretary of State website. In this case, the Florida Secretary of State website would be sunbiz.org. So the Division of Corporations section, and that's where you will actually register your business. And typically you want to go ahead and register your business in whatever state you're actually operating. There are very few circumstances in which it makes sense to register in a different state. Typically that'll happen if you're in certain industries that are regulated differently state to state, and it can impact your ability to perhaps to do your work, or maybe they're taxed differently state to state, and it'll impact your taxes. Keep in mind though, you may have to apply as a business, a foreign business. If you are, let's say, registered in Delaware. For a while there, every business wanted to register in Delaware instead of Florida. If you are one of them, you very well may still have to register with Florida as a foreign business and pay Florida money. So be sure to keep that in mind before you opt to register your business in a different state. Typically, you will want to just register in the state where you're located and doing business so that you don't have to pay any additional fees. Okay, now at the state level, you also may have to get a license depending on your type of work. So depending on what exactly you do, there may be specific licenses required for your businesses or your employees. Think real estate agents, general contractors. They all have state licensing exams. They need to be licensed in order to do that kind of work. Even cosmetologists have to have that state license. So make sure that if you're in an industry that requires licensure, you do go ahead and research the licensure process, make sure you get that set up for any owners or employees that would be acting in that particular capacity. That way your business doesn't run the risk of getting shut down because it was operating without the proper licenses. And then at the local level, you'll want to think about where are you operating and what are the requirements either at the city or the county level for businesses. For example, if you have a home business, let's say you have an Etsy shop and you do everything in your home, you go to the post office once a day to mail things out, or you have the post office pick things up at your house, right? Usually most cities and counties in Central Florida will say you can have a home business as long as you don't have foot traffic coming into the business at all. So usually an Etsy shop would be acceptable. However, if you were trying to operate a home business where you actually had foot traffic coming into your home, that would probably be prohibited in most zoning areas. So that's something to keep in mind. The type of business that you have may dictate where you can operate that business, whether you can do it from home or whether you have to find a physical space. Now, if you do have to find a physical space, then, and I see we have a quick request to look at the IRS website. Absolutely, let me go back to that for you. And is it that slide that you were looking for, Claudia? So bit.ly 39 LB F4G. Okay, looks like that was helpful. Excellent, not a problem. Want to make sure everyone gets that resource. It's a great, very factual, straightforward kind of resource. Okay, so zoning requirements. If you do have a physical office front or retail front store for your business, you want to make sure that it is in the proper zone for that type of business, right? So we all know that commercial space is definitely zoned differently than residential space. That's fairly common knowledge. But are there any other zoning requirements? Are there zoning requirements about the types of businesses that can be in the physical space that you're looking at? And even if they don't apply necessarily to your physical space, are there zoning requirements that are super close that could be impacting the amount of foot traffic your business will get? Those are important things to consider. So you always want to make sure that you're paying attention to any zoning requirements when you're creating your business and picking a space for it. And then business tax receipts, also known as occupational licenses. So these are usually taxes that you are going to go ahead and pay to your local tax collector's office. Even if you have home offices, you are paying a business tax receipt or deduction here. Basically, if you are taking any kind of home office deductions, if you're running a business out of your home office, you should be registered at the local either city or county level to have this occupational license. If you don't and you are found to be running your business without it, without basically paying the local county or city for the privilege of running a business out of your home, then you do risk getting shut down. So it's really important to make sure that you do this. Usually it is as simple as filling out a form on your local city or county government website and paying a small fee. Okay, so typically it is not that big of a deal. It is usually renewed every year. So it is an annual expense, but you're pretty much looking at less than $200 in most jurisdictions. So it's not that big of an expense to build in on an annual basis. And then think about whether you need any additional licenses. If you're a bar, you need a liquor license. I used to live in New York City, and of course, if you're a limo or taxi service, you need your own license for that. So different industries are going to require different additional licenses in some cases. So please be sure to research that or consult an attorney about that as well to make sure that you're not missing a key license that could potentially wind up getting your business shut down. Okay, now on the federal level, we have your EIN, your Federal Employer Identification Number. Sometimes it's referred to as an FEIN, sometimes just EIN, other times tax ID number. Either way, it's all the same thing. It's your business's social security number, essentially. And if you visit this bit.ly link, 39LBF4G, you can, it's the same link as before. You can go ahead and select the third bullet point this time, before I asked you to select the second bullet point. The third bullet point is the employer identification number, or EIN, and you'll put in some basic information about your business and it'll automatically generate the number for you. You do have to register with the state first before you go ahead and get this EIN though. So make sure you've done that state registration first. And once you have your EIN, you can register with a bank to get a bank account in the name of your business. So everything's kind of got to go in order. If you haven't been through this process before, I know it can seem a little overwhelming, but if you just take it one step at a time, you'll be just fine. Typically, you'll go ahead and register your state registration, and then you'll go ahead and do your EIN and then your bank. So again, one thing at a time, you can get it done almost within the same day in some cases. And of course, when it comes to the federal level, there's such a thing as taxes at that level too. I'm sorry, I did not invent that rule. But you do have to make sure that you pay any federal taxes on your business, any state taxes, such as New York has state taxes, and any local taxes like Manhattan or Philadelphia, and sometimes even a corporate tax, which could include Florida. So again, talk to your accountant, talk to your attorney, make sure that you're all set up when it comes to your taxes in particular. But that's a step that you'll take after you get the bank account set up and you are actually open for business. And you also want to discuss issues like payroll and sales and self-employment taxes with your CPA as well, to make sure that you're all covered on those fronts. Okay. So your CPA will also likely tell you about some important forms depending on the type of business you run and whether you have any employees or independent contractors. W-2s, W-4s, those are all going to be helpful if you have employees. If you have independent contractors, a number of the businesses that I represent work with independent contractors. So not only do they have a contract for each of those independent contractors to sign, but they also have to deal with taxes on the federal side. So they make those people fill out 1099 or W-9 so that they can go ahead and say, you're responsible for your taxes kind of thing. These are all things you should consult your accountant about to make sure that you know what's going to be best for your business. Sometimes financial decisions and some other decisions about how often you'll need people to work can actually make the difference as to whether you select to have employees or independent contractors. So that's something to consider as well. Now, intellectual property. We're going to switch gears a little bit and take a break from business formation and all the logistics of the licenses and taxes you have to worry about. And we're going to look at how to protect the things that you have created. So intellectual property, basically, if you think about real property, like the house that you own, intellectual property is ideas that you have created and put into some sort of tangible form. You've drawn a picture, you've written a book, things of that nature. You've created something brand new. So we're going to look at how to protect your intellectual property and what kinds of intellectual property you need to be aware of as a business owner. So first, we're going to take a look at trademarks. So trademarks, and depending on your industry, it might be referred to as a service mark, depending on whether you provide a service or a product. They protect your brand identifiers. So I want you to think about something like the Full Sail orange circle with a plane in it, or the Bank of America almost flag-like looking symbol next to its name. Those are logos, and when you see them, you know exactly what they represent. Okay, on a broader scale, you could think about McDonald's, that giant M arch in yellow, that is McDonald's brand identifier. It is their logo, and every time people see it, they know it represents McDonald's. Whatever you have as your business logo or brand identifier, that is something that can be trademarked. Similarly, it's possible that your business name might be eligible for a trademark. Now, I say might be because anything that's too generic, too commonplace, that can't be trademarked. So as an example, I own a business called eMediation Services. Well, eMediation Services is a very generic phrase. It's something that you can't trademark. However, you can trademark something like Zoom. Zoom is a word that normally means to go fast, but has been applied to a computer software that allows for virtual conferencing. So since it's being used in a different, unexpected way, it can be trademarked when it's being used in that way. So depending on your business name, you may be able to get a trademark. Also, if your business has a slogan, and that slogan isn't a generic kind of common phrase that people would say in day-to-day life, then that's something that might be eligible for a trademark as well. And the idea behind trademarks is just that we want to protect anything that shows the source of goods or services. So we want people, consumers, to know where their products are coming from. And to do that, we need to protect anything that would identify the source of those goods or services, such as businesses, logos, and names. So that's the idea behind a trademark. Now, you can actually have a state registered trademark. It is cheaper and faster to register at the state level. You also can register at the federal level, and the federal level is what you'll see most bigger companies do, even small companies, to be honest with you, because that gives you protection across state lines. So that's going to be a lot more helpful, particularly if you have a website or you're selling masks to people on Etsy, and those people might live all over the country. So federal protection is something that you'll probably want to seriously consider, but it is more expensive and it does take more time. Typically, if you're registering at the state level, you will hear back from the state about whether your mark is registered quite quickly, within a few months at most. And you're looking at spending probably less than $300 to register it. If you're registering at the federal level, you're looking at spending, with all the applications and attorney's fees and everything, you're probably looking at spending closer to $1,000, maybe even more. And you're looking at something more in the year to 18-month time frame to hear back as to whether your mark is successfully registered. So you want to go ahead and keep that in mind. If you're trying to get your business going quickly, if you're only operating within the state, if you want to try and save money, the state registration is the way to go, at least at the beginning. And then once you have a little more money rolling in the door, you may want to consider the federal level. You can have both state and federal protection simultaneously. That's completely fine. There's no concern with that. When it comes to registering a trademark, you have to identify what industry your mark is in. So for example, if any of you have ever flown on a Delta airline, then you may have also heard that there's such a thing as a Delta faucet. Those two Delta trademarks actually get to coexist because they're in two totally separate industries. If I tell you that, oh yeah, I took Delta from Florida to California last night, there's no chance you'll confuse that with a kitchen sink faucet. So you have to identify the industry, because you can have the same name or the similar logo if they're in totally different industries. And you register a trademark at the federal level with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO for short. Marks will actually be registered for 10 years once you secure approval from the USPTO, and you can renew those marks every decade as long as you would like. So it is typically around a $325 fee every time you file with the USPTO, every time you say you want to be in a certain class. So if you say, hey, I not only want to be in the airline industry, I also want to be in the faucet industry, then you're going to pay two separate fees for that. But it's not prohibitively expensive. It just, if you're not familiar with the process, you'll probably want to secure an attorney to help you with the process, because it can be complicated. The one thing to watch out for, and the reason I wanted to mention these trademarks tonight, is that you want to make sure that you are selecting a mark that is not already in use. You're not going to be able to secure a trademark for something that's already in use, like a Delta faucet, right? If I wanted to make the name of my plumbing company that creates faucets Delta, that would not work. The USPTO would say, no, there's already a brand that has that trademark. We will not register you. So when you're setting up your business, you want to do a little market research. You want to see what other brands are out there, what are their names, what do their logos look like, so that you can differentiate your name, your slogan, your logo from all of what you're seeing out there within your industry, because that's how you'll be able to secure a trademark. That's how you'll be able to differentiate yourself in marketing. That's how you'll avoid a lawsuit for trademark infringement. And that's how you'll be able to protect your business as well, because you'll be able to get a trademark and prevent other people from infringing on your mark. So that research can definitely be time consuming, but it is well worth it. I have had a few clients, unfortunately, who did not do that research on the front end before setting up their business. And then after they got running, another business with a similar name reached out to them and said, "You're infringing on our mark, please cease operation immediately." And we had to negotiate terms for ceasing business and exactly what that would look like, restructure under a new name. It's a lot of hassle. It loses a lot of money. It costs a lot of money. It's much cheaper to do this research on the front end and save yourself the hassle, the stress, and the money all at once. Now, I also mentioned that copyrights are a type of intellectual property. Copyrights apply to any ideas that you've reduced to tangible form and that are unique. So, for example, if you've written a book, that's a great example of something that can be copyrighted. If you've recorded a song or written out lyrics for a song, if you've made a film or written a script for a film, if you've taken photographs or created artwork, those are all things that are eligible for copyright protection. And with that said, copyrights are most likely to be something that people in the artistic industries need to be aware of and need to get comfortable doing, filing, I should say. So if you're a photographer, a musician, a graphic designer, a web designer even, a marketing content developer, those are all people who need to be aware of copyrights. You also may want to file a copyright for your logo. Now, will it protect your brand? No. But will it protect other people from copying that exact design? Yes. So it has a different purpose when you register it for copyright than when you register it for a trademark. Now, with that said, someone I probably left off this list would be a filmmaker. So someone who creates a film, even someone who writes a script for a film. Those are people who should know about copyrights as well, because copyrights are helpful for protecting those works of art too. Okay, copyrights are only registerable on the federal level. So the US Copyright Office handles those registrations, and it's very inexpensive to register. You can actually now even register a collection, like a series of blog posts or a series of photographs that are all from the same thing. So from the same collection, I should say. And once you've registered that copyright, legally, you are entitled to protect in a court of law any of those works. But basically, the idea behind a copyright is that you are the person who has the right to distribute those works, to display them, to copy them, if it's a piece of music or something like that, to perform it, and to make any creative derivatives of it as well. So it gives you a lot of control over your own work to make sure that no one else can really use it or copy it in a way that you wouldn't want them to. That's the goal of a copyright, that they have to seek your permission in order to use it in any way. Typically, a copyright will last for about 70 years after a creator's death. So if you create, let's say, a book, and you live until, I don't know, 2070, then it won't be for another 70 years after that that your work loses its copyright and goes into the public domain. There are a few exceptions. depending on who the author is and what year the work was created and everything. But that's the general rule that'll apply in most cases for anything you're producing today. I always recommend when it comes to your IP to consult an attorney to determine if your business should actually own the IP or if you as an individual should own the IP. Typically, you'll see that the business will own the intellectual property. If it's, let's say, your logo, or if it's a piece of music that the business created or something of that nature. The duration of a copyright will last longer if a business owns it in most circumstances. So that can be a key factor as well. Lots to talk about with an attorney. The other thing is that if you're someone who's going to be filing copyrights frequently, like photographers, videographers, you may want to ask an IP attorney to give you a tutorial on how to fill out the copyright registration form properly for the kind of work that you do. And then whenever it's something basic that you've done before and gotten a tutorial on before, you can do it yourself and save yourself some money. I know myself and a number of other IP attorneys here in Florida will actually go ahead and do that. For our clients, we'll say, let's do a tutorial. You'll learn how to file copyrights for whatever you do most. And then if you ever have a one-off where you're trying to register some different type of work, go ahead and contact me and I can do it for you or talk you through the changes. But that's a good way to save yourself some money, is to do kind of a tutorial session with an IP attorney to get some help with that, and then register your own copyrights moving forward if you are comfortable doing so. Now, when it comes to images, I always recommend watermarking your images when you share them or publish them so people can't use them for your permission. If you are a graphic designer, a photographer, an artist, these are all going to be important things for you to do. We find that there are lots of Facebook groups and random websites that will try and steal images, unfortunately, and then we have to get them shut down. So please make sure you watermark them so people can't use them in a way that will make them happy, because then they are less likely to steal them. And as I mentioned, if you are, let's say, a photographer and you take a whole collection of wedding photos and you retain the copyrights, you know, you've had the couple sign a contract that says you retain the copyrights to those images, then you can actually register that whole collection at once. So you don't have to register each individual photo, which is really helpful because you may have taken 2,000 photos throughout the course of that wedding. So that's something to consider as well. And if you are ever going to go to court to enforce your rights as a copyright holder, you do have to have that federal registration. So just keep in mind, we've seen a few scenarios where maybe people didn't have the federal registration, but they tried to sue for copyright infringement anyway, and courts have come back and said, nope, you need the federal registration to get your door in the courtroom, or your foot in the door of the courtroom, sorry. Okay, copyright transfers. You will often find people will use a contract, a written agreement, to transfer copyrights. I mentioned wedding photographers earlier. You know, wedding photographers typically transfer the copyrights of the wedding photos over to the couple, and they do so via a written contract. Graphic designers usually do this too. Graphic designers say, I am getting paid a little bit extra money so that I will relinquish the copyrights to the designs I create and give them over to whoever I created the designs for. You want to make sure your copyright transfers are in writing though. That they're not going to do you any good if they're just an oral agreement. So please make sure you get that in writing. And then patents. Patents are really helpful forms of intellectual property if you are creating or inventing something new. Technically, the term for a patent is something that is useful, novel, and non-obvious, and it's an invention. The telephone was useful, obviously, and novel originally, and non-obvious invention. So that was patented. Now, when it comes to patents, they only exist on the federal level. And the thing that I want you to remember most is that you don't want to discuss your patentable idea with anyone before you actually get the patent from the USPTO, because it is too easy for people to steal it and try and register it for you. I have a client who held on to an idea for about 20 years. He had a son who he created a game for, made his own little invention for the son to play with, and didn't actually end up registering it until the son was about 20. So, and good for him, because he never told anyone what it was. His wife and his son knew it, and that was it. And that's important with patents, to make sure no one else steals your idea. You'll register your patent with the USPTO, the US Patent and Trademark Office, same one you register your trademark with. And typically you'll want to have an attorney help you with this registration. This is by far the most complicated intellectual property registration you will see. Even as an attorney, most attorneys do not practice patent law, because it requires an extra level of knowledge, experience, etc. So you will want to find an attorney who is a patent law attorney to go ahead and help you with that registration. But your patent will last for 20 years, and then it automatically falls into the public domain after those 20 years have expired. They are pretty expensive, okay? You're looking at thousands of dollars, no doubt. However, if you're the inventor of some cool new item, then first off, kudos to you. And second off, you want to protect your work. You want to make sure no one else can steal it, and a patent might be the best way to do that. And then when it comes to intellectual property, we also have trade secrets. So trade secrets are basically you protecting whatever gives you a competitive advantage. So your competitive advantage, if you're a chef or you run a business, or sorry, a restaurant, might be a secret recipe. If you are in marketing or real estate, it could be your client list. You know, every industry kind of has its own secrets that give certain businesses a competitive advantage. The key to the phrase trade secret is it has to be something you are actively keeping a secret. Shocker, I know. But you want to make sure that you do actually protect it as your deepest and darkest secret. So you don't register it anywhere. You don't tell it to anyone who doesn't absolutely positively have to know it. And even then, you may wind up telling a few different people different pieces of the secret. So no one person has the whole secret. The other thing to keep in mind is before you tell even the people who have to know the secret what that secret is, you want to make them sign a contract that says they will not tell that secret to anybody. Before they learn the secret is the time to tell them to sign a contract, okay? Once you have their signature on that contract, then you can tell them what the secret really is. That way, if for any reason they start going around town babbling that secret, you can sue them and win damages from them. So those contracts, we see them pop up in a variety of forms. Normally it'll be a non-disclosure. You'll also usually associate it with a non-compete. So a non-disclosure is where you say you are not allowed to disclose any of this information, and you identify exactly what that information is, not the secret itself, but for example, our client lists. And then the secret is the exact names of clients, that kind of thing. And you also generally will have them sign a non-compete that says they will not use any of this information after they leave for an extended period of time or something like that. Different states have different restrictions on how long non-competes can last, and also how far geographically a non-compete can go. Some states will say, you know, you can only go maybe an hour or a 2-hour drive. Other states will say 100 miles. Every place is a little different. When it comes to having a non-disclosure or non-compete drafted, you would probably want to consult an attorney for assistance with that. The good thing there is that once you have the non-compete or the non-disclosure drafted, you can go ahead and use it for whoever you need to share that secret with. So you might be, at least in a number of cases, you can. If you're giving, 3 employees same bit of information, then you'll have 3 people sign 3 identical non-disclosure, non-compete agreements in most cases. And then you may have restrictive licenses as well, such as for software or patentable items. That's something that you might want to consider as well when it comes to protecting your trade secrets. So contracts, obviously, are pretty important. They're a great way to protect your business. And I do definitely recommend hiring an attorney to draft your contracts and to review the contracts that others ask you to sign. I've had a number of clients come to me over the years saying, hey, so I've been using this contract and now someone's threatening to sue me. And I look at their contract and I say, that's a cute piece of paper. Who drafted this for you? And they say they drafted it themselves, and that's why there are a whole bunch of loopholes, and that's why we're now involved in negotiations to try and avoid a lawsuit. So it will save you time, stress, and money. If you get a contract drafted properly on the front end, then you'll encounter on the back end should anything go awry. One recommendation I do have is that if you, let's say, are negotiating with someone yourself, you think you've come to terms as far as what both of you want, go ahead and make some notes about what both of you want, hand it off to your attorney, and ask them to put it in contract form. It's actually going to be easier for your attorney to take your notes and put it in contract form than it is for your attorney to try and edit some sort of contract that you wrote yourself in an attempt to help. I get that. I get that you mean to be useful, but it's going to be easier for me to, look at some templates that I have for similar works and input the information you want in there. And if it's easier for me, that means it takes me less time, which means it saves you money. So that's also a good way to make sure that you don't kind of have too many billable hours with your attorney. You do want to make sure that you are consistent about enforcing your contracts. So I know sometimes people say, well, I don't really want to sue that person, even though I have the right to under the contract, because they're really nice, they're going through a hard time, fill in the blank. They were a really good employee for a decade, whatever it may be. I get that, but you want to be consistent, because if you're not consistent, other people who maybe you do want to enforce the contract against are going to argue that this contract, it doesn't mean anything, or that you're discriminating against them because you're not enforcing it with other people and you are enforcing it with them, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure you're always consistent when it comes to enforcing the contracts and when it comes to sending invoices. So invoices are really important so that your business gets paid, and you want to make sure that you are consistent about sending them. Again, it may be a matter of putting on your Google Calendar, I know I have this product going out this day, so I know I need to send this invoice this day, and I'm going to give myself 15 minutes to get that invoice emailed over to them, so that they, have it in a timely fashion. And that's fine. Put it on your Google Calendar. Be prepared for it. Also, any kind of repetitive tasks, you want to go ahead and calendar in for each week, each month, each day, whatever it may be. I know for me, I'll calendar in on a monthly basis, everything from looking at which students at Full Sail I think should get awards at graduation, to making sure my dog gets his flea and tick medication. Luckily on Google Calendar, I can set both of those things to pop up as a reminder for me every 4 weeks, so I never have to think about them again until the calendar alert appears on my phone. But those kinds of repetitive tasks that you feel like you're likely to forget are great to put into your calendar. And also avoid procrastination. That's another thing that will really get you down if you're a business owner. It can make things so much more stressful for you. And it can, if it gets bad enough, negatively impact your business's reputation, which obviously we don't want for any of you. So avoid procrastination as much as possible. Be realistic when you're calendaring items. And if you're someone who knows that she tends to procrastinate or that stuff comes up, so the calendar's got to be a little bit flexible, then you need to make sure the way you calendar allows for extra time. You know, for example, if you're working on a big project, I just wrote an article for the American Bar Association. They told me about it in the end of July. My deadline to submit it was yesterday. I had calendared it in maybe for 2 days in August, and then another 2 in the beginning of August, and another 2 days at the end of August. Give myself a few hours each time to work on it. Well, the first time I did all my research, got all my sources together. The second time something came up. But luckily I had calendared it back in. And so when it came up again at the end of August, it was, oh yeah, stuff's getting real. I only got about a week to get this in. So I was able to get it done actually a little bit early, which was terrific, even though I felt like I was probably procrastinating a little. But I planned my procrastination, and that's really the key. If you're someone who likes to procrastinate, you know that about yourself. You can plan and build in repetition to your calendar so that that procrastination doesn't impact your business, especially when it comes to a PR perspective. The other big tip I have for you is to just make sure your calendar and your list of tasks, all of that is consolidated in one place. If you're trying to figure out, oh, I thought I had something in, you know, my Outlook calendar. No, maybe it was my Google calendar. No, I had something on my Evernote or my sticky note at my computer at home. If you're trying to go in 20 different directions just to figure out what you need to do in a day, you're not going to feel organized and you're not going to be organized. So make sure that whatever kind of organization system you use, you keep it consolidated and simple so that it actually will be effective in helping you stay organized and helping you avoid stress. And networking. Networking is really important as a business owner. You want to get your name out there. You want to get your business and brand out there. And networking with people is the best way to do that. So be consistent with your networking, you know, make sure that you are setting aside time every week, every month, whatever's comfortable for you to do some networking. Put that into your calendar. Set it as one of those repetitive events. Also, social media followers, they're going to appreciate consistency. So make sure you post consistently. Using a scheduling tool like Hootsuite can be really good for making sure that you're posting consistently, because what you can do is you can go in on, let's say, Saturday, and you can set up all your posts for the upcoming week. And you can make sure every week you're just setting posts, let's say for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 a.m. And your followers will quickly learn those are the days and the mornings that you post on. So that's when they should look for new content from you. And make sure those social media profiles obviously are promoting a consistent brand identity for your business as well. Followers are much more likely to feel confident in your brand and buy from your brand if they see consistency across multiple social media and websites. So you want to make sure you have that professional presence on the internet. And customer service. Now, this is one you should never procrastinate on. Customer service should be your #1 priority as a business owner. That is always going to be something that you need to kind of drop everything to deal with. So please don't procrastinate on that. And if you have any unhappy customers, then listen to them. It can be hard to listen to them. I get it. You know, if they were happy because you did something right, then yeah, it'd probably be easier to listen to them because you two are getting along and seeing eye to eye. If they're unhappy, chances are that's because you two see things differently. And it can be hard to listen to people who you don't see things on the same kind of playing field with. but you do want to try your best to listen to any unhappy customers and think about what changes maybe could be implemented from that, whether it's just preventing future disputes from coming up or whether it's actually implementing changes that that customer had suggested. Either way, you want to learn something from any unhappy customer experience that you have. So overall, when it comes to being successful in business, I would highly recommend being patient and making sure that you treat every day as an opportunity to learn and to grow and figure out what the best operational procedures are for you. You know, I said at the beginning that when I was little, I had one definition of success and now I have another. And it's true, your definition of success should evolve as you and your business evolve. And as long as you're having fun, then frankly, I think you're being successful. So I hope tonight's webinar was helpful. I know I ran through the material quickly. I wanted to get as much information out there to you as possible, but I do want to take just a few minutes to open it up to any questions that you may have before I close out this evening's session.
Hi, Christy. I did have a question. This is Callie. You were talking about the business formats, and one of the things that I was looking into is which one of these types of business formations are amenable to like international types of business. Are any of them, are all of them able to cross to international, or is there one better than another?
Great question. So LLCs are not always recognized in other countries. Corporations are recognized in other countries. So if you're really thinking about international, then a corporate structure might be something to seriously discuss with your attorney.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Christy. This is Tanisha Cherry. I had a question. You talked about trademarks and doing your homework up front to save you time and money in the end. How do you suggest we go about doing that? Do we just like do a lot of Google and just, you know, internet searches, or is there a way to actually do some of the work up front? So then that way, when you actually go to an attorney, you kind of have a good idea that this is not already taken, and then they can just simply file the paperwork for you. So how do you go about doing that work up front?
Great question. So first off, you know, going to Google and searching for images and phrases like slogans and business names is going to be really helpful. Also, knowing your industry, doing your market research ahead of time, whether that be through networking or internet research, is going to be very helpful as well. It is very useful if you can go to your attorney and say, look, I've done extensive research. Here are the sources I've checked. I haven't found anything similar. However, I will tell you that as an attorney, there are other things that I will check as well. I'll check the USPTO database, and sometimes that can be a little confusing for people to navigate if they're not already familiar with it, but that's one of the first sources that I'll check. So basically, if you can do some of the research up front and tell your attorney, I've checked some of these, that will save them a little bit of time. And therefore save you a little bit of money. But I can pretty much guarantee your attorney is going to want to do his or her own research as well, just to confirm that there's nothing too similar that you might have missed. The standard for trademark infringement is consumer confusion. So what that means is that, let's say you have a really cool name for your business, maybe you spell it in a really unique way. Well, maybe there's already a business that spells it in a more common way. And that's going to be a problem for the USPTO. So the attorney knows all those little kind of one-off things to look for and is going to wind up wanting to do their own research in addition to whatever research you've done. But doing your own research will allow you to at least come up with what you think will be a good business name or a good business logo or a good business slogan, and go to your attorney and say, hey, I think we're good with these. Here's what I've looked at. If you can do some additional research to confirm it so we can get this filed, I would appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christy, I have another question too. This is Callie again. Can an algorithm be something like a secret, how would you call it, trade secret? Or is it something that is not really, I'm not quite sure about how an algorithm would be patentable, or if how you utilize it can be a trade secret.
Great question. So copy or coding that gives you that algorithm you're looking for, right? Software coding, the actual sequence of exact letters and codes, that can actually potentially be copyrighted and or patented. And so what you'll see in some cases is that in order to keep it as a trade secret, but still try and protect it, some companies will actually register it as a copyright, but redact some of the key information so that they can keep it as a trade secret. And then they only let, key employees who develop the code go ahead and know, or who are implementing the code even, know what those redacted portions are. So you have a few different options when it comes to coding like that.
That is awesome. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, something you should talk to your attorney about regarding what is going to be my best option for my type of business and my goals with this particular code. The other thing to keep in mind is that the way software changes so quickly, a number of businesses aren't necessarily willing to invest a ton of money or a ton of time into, let's say, securing a patent for it. And securing a patent for it means that everybody would know the code. So they may not be willing to have that secret get out. So that might be another reason that they avoid patents.
Okay.
Because when you register it, it's out, like you can go to the USPTO database and look up a patent.
Yeah,
So,
I have a situation with Microsoft where I do bring computer interfaces, and they tried to put a general patent on one of the papers that I had published in IEEE. But I was successful in blocking the patent, but I try to do some of this work in open source because I would rather have people in the field keep creating on it, because most of my work is done for rehabilitation. But if it's done for commercial entity, I can go ahead and try to patent the work. But that was disturbing to me.
yeah, depending on some employment agreements, I have a friend who's an engineer, and he works for a company. He will actually, in his employment agreement, he had to sign off on the fact that anything he creates, the company is welcome to file a patent on it and own that patent. Depending on your employment agreement, that very well may be the case. You see that a lot in tech industries, medical industries, things of that nature.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as we wind down, Christy, I want to give you a huge thank you, and I want to give a little bit of a value add, but you are a tough act to follow with value add with all the great information. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, there are 3 little dots in the chat box, because I'm about to go through and drop to you a bunch of links that should prove helpful, or you can just start hopping on and making tabs. So first thing I want to share is a link to the Women Who Win roundtables. So each month, the week after this session, you will be able to get access to a roundtable where you'll have a few more industry experts in a smaller setting going through some of their journey stories, some of their best practices. Every single month, you're meeting one of our women from the Propel Her Pitch competition. In addition to that, you're meeting industry representatives as well. So next week, we will have another attorney who is also an entrepreneur. You will have a representative from the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and you'll have one of our other Propel Her finalists sharing her story. In addition to that, I want to share with you some really fun news, because I reached out to NALBO National, and NALBO National explained that with their upcoming Next Gen track for next week, which is one of their national program initiatives, I included the link to the Now Vote Next Gen program so you can see the dates and times for the programming, but there is a scholarship that is available. If you click on that link, you'll fill out, I believe it's on the SurveyMonkey platform. You'll fill out a short questionnaire and it will put you in the running to get a scholarship potentially to attend the Next Gen track, which is an amazing opportunity, and it aligns so well with Women Who Win. So definitely something great to be able to go through and check out. In addition to that, since we were talking a lot about legal concepts and calendaring and strategy and things of that nature, if tomorrow morning around 10 you just want to grab a cup of coffee and just relax, we have a great coffee conversation with Carly Myers of the Stress Less Company, and she'll be going through and talking about some different ways to reduce stress in your life. And then on Saturday, if you want a little bit of virtual self-care Saturday, you are welcome to go through and register and join us for Wellness for Winning. We have a variety of doctors from Orlando Health, who is our presenting sponsor, as well as a number of members of our wellness community will be providing all sorts of great information and details. So unfortunately, the swag bags have been claimed, but fortunately, it's a completely free wellness event. We have a trainer from The Biggest Loser. We have a TEDx speaker on health and wellness who's a former marketing executive who's worked in the technology space. In addition to that, we have an ER doctor who deals with confidence and positivity. We have a cook and Whole30 coach who's going to give you a little bit of a tip on a paleo dish, as well as our doctors talking about women's health, cardiology, and a variety of other topics. And then for those of you who stayed till the very end, we all had that teacher who gave you like the value add at the very end. You actually get the sneak peek link for next week on the 17th, our coffee conversation, which is financial planning best practices for female business owners, hosted by RSM. So feel free to grab those links. With the exception of our Women Who Win roundtables, all of the links that you have listed are available. So Callie, I'll go ahead and drop you a quick line at the end if you have a question or an exclamation there. But I want to go through again and thank Christy so much. Thank Full Sail University for allowing us to take the time and the talent of some of these amazing educators to give us a great roadmap as we go throughout our journey. For those of you part of our roundtable series, I will see you next Wednesday. Hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow for Reduce Stress. But I also want to thank our co-chair for Women Who Win, Liz Roney, for all of her help. So I hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you so much.